Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Bree. Today's video, we're going to be talking through all my Gothic books that are on my TBR. I don't do full TBR videos anymore, but I do want to just talk through some books that I have on my shelves in the different categories so you can kind of see what I hope to be reading soon, but also because I think this is great to kind of get to know my reading taste a little bit. So I went to pull down Gothic books, and I went on Goodreads and I looked up a Gothic books list and what defines Gothic books, and I pulled down from my shelves what were on that list and what fit that criteria. Turns out I have a lot of books. I have almost 20 books to show you that are considered Gothic books, and then I have one that is not on my physical TBR yet, but is one that I want to pick up and I know for sure I'll pick up, but I left off any that are even just on my want to read but I don't own physically because that list would just get out of hand. But I was surprised by how many I had because I knew I like Gothic books, but I didn't realize how many have that theme or fits the criteria. So first I'll start with what are Gothic books. So this is something I kind of had an inkling of, like I call things Gothic a lot, but I wasn't 100% sure on the definition. And according to Goodreads, Gothic fiction, it combines the uncanny and romance. So especially they talked about the romantic era as well. So think like in terms of classics, like Wuthering Heights is a Gothic story. Another classic is They Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. Jane Eyre and Rebecca are all examples of classics. Frankenstein and Dracula, all those would be considered Gothic books because they combine this uncanny with romance. But I think what they mean by romance is kind of, it doesn't just have to be a actual romance, but it can also be the way it's written. It's written in a romantic setting and feeling. Then they broke down what features have to be in a book to be considered Gothic, and so this is a little list here. I'm just going to read it off. It doesn't have to have all of these, but it has combinations of these. The first one is terror, either psychological or physical, mystery, supernatural, ghosts, haunted houses, castles, darkness, death, decay, madness, etc. So I think one thing I realized while doing this is also it's fairly closely tied to dark academia, which is not a genre I like. So it's interesting that I like Gothic but not dark academia, and I think that there are overlaps, but they're not always the same. And I'd really be interested to kind of look more into the dark academia because I was looking through all the books on the Gothic list, and the ones I've read that are on that list, a lot of them got 4 or 5 stars, but then there was some that I would consider dark academia that were on that list that I gave lower ratings to. And every book that I noticed that was a lower rating tended to be in that more, in my mind, that more dark academia genre. So I'd love to know what your thoughts are on the difference if you want to leave a comment down below, because it's something I'm really interested in, because I'm not sure how many of these might actually be considered more dark academia and might not actually work for me. That's another time to get into that. For now, let's just go through all the books that are on my TBR that are considered Gothic books. I won't be going into super in-depth plot because I'm not the best when I haven't read a book of knowing the plot. It's more I pick up books based on vibes or if I've read from the author before. So yes, without further ado, let's get into it. First one I have is one I actually tried to pick up last year and put it down. It just wasn't the time for it. It's not one that I think I'm going to dislike. I just was not in the mood for it. So that's A Dowry of Blood by S.C. Gibson. I wanted to read it this year as well, and maybe I'll still get to it this month, but right now I haven't read it. And this is following our main girl, Constanta, and it's about her relationship with Dracula, and it's written with letters, and I don't believe she ever references it by name. He's never called out by name. And it's about like an abusive relationship with Dracula, and also I think it's sapphic as well. It's a really interesting topic, and again with Gothic, combining this kind of talk about abuse and stuff in a Gothic setting, I think can lend itself really well. So that's A Dowry of Blood. I know everyone loves this and I need to get to it soon. Then we have this one, which I picked up kind of on a whim at Half Price Books, and that's The Betrayals by Bridget Collins. If I remember, this has to do with like an academy. This one is one that I'm not sure is going to be dark academia or not, but I believe it's like 2 rivals at this academy, and I think the woman is the first woman there, and it has to do with an arcane and mysterious contest that the students have to go. And I think there's a romance between the main characters, Leo and Claire. And as the legendary Midsummer Game draws closer, secrets are whispering in the walls. So that sounds very Gothic to me. And this was also on the list of Gothic books. So I have this on my TBR. This is one that I'm a little unsure about because If it's leaning dark academia, we'll have to see. I've also been going into more books like this that are gothic or horror and looking up more trigger warnings because I was bad about that before, and now I kind of look up before I go in because sometimes I can handle the content that's being talked about and then there are ones that I can't. So that's just a little tidbit. Next we have one that I picked up really recently and was kind of surprised, though not really, to see this on the list. Oh, it literally says gothic storytelling up here, so I don't know why I was confused about it. But that's The Quick by Lauren Owen. I'd never heard about this except for seeing it at half price. It's a historical fantasy story where a man goes missing and his sister has to try to find him. And she gets wrapped up into like the supernatural, and I believe there are vampires in here. So that's all I really know about it. But it says she soon uncovers a city's secret, a supernatural underworld populated from the top to the dregs by terrifying creatures. So sounds really up my alley, and this is the kind of gothic book I think I'm gonna really enjoy, and I can't wait to pick this one up. It sounds really good, and I haven't heard anything about it. It was published in like 2014, so that's probably why. So yeah, if you've read this, please let me know your thoughts because I've never seen this anywhere else. This one I picked up a really long time ago and also on a whim, and I'm trying not to do that anymore. But this, all I know is it says, "Will keep you up all night, a gothic mystery like no other." It's The Whispering House by Elizabeth Brooks. I really don't know anything about this except for it's a mystery with sister secrets, and it's at a hall, which I feel like gothic books set in like a hall or manor or something like that usually got some spookiness to it, which I like. It seems like it's going to be a conversation about sisterhood, which I think is interesting. So this one is one that I really have not a lot to give you on, but it is on my TBR as gothic. Then we have one that is one of my favorite authors, and that is The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. I recently did a book haul for October, and I said I only had one more book of hers to pick up after this, and I lied because I haven't read this one yet. But this is a retelling of the, I think it's called The Isle of Dr. Moreau. Is that the original tale? But it's about the daughter of Dr. Moreau, who was a scientist who was turning like creatures or people into creatures or creatures into people. He was trying to make creatures more human-like, and it's about the daughter of Dr. Moreau, and I believe there's a romance in it as well. And I've just loved so many of her books, especially the more gothic type stories. The more noir stories, like these two, I haven't loved as much. The Silver Nitrate and Velvet Was the Night, I haven't loved quite as much, but Mexican Gothic I loved. I really loved the Beautiful Ones, and I think this one is going to be one that I'm going to love just as much. So I'm really excited to get to this one. I especially like the way Sylvia Moreno Garcia writes. I think she really encompasses that like gothic romantic writing that I just come to love from her. So I'm really hoping this one is like that as well. Next we have a historical mystery, and that is The Strings of Murder by Oscar de Muriel. I've had this on my TBR for a really long time, but I've been holding off because I've been trying to catch up on some series, but I do really want to read this. It's about a missing violin in 1888, and I think it's in Spain. No, it's in Edinburgh, but it's got a detective who's trying to find this missing violin, and I believe there are 3 different musicians who are murdered before the violin goes missing or something like that, and so the detective is trying to figure out what's going on. It's a historical mystery, which I've been trying to find more that I really like, and I've heard really good things about this one, and so I'm excited to give it a try. It is translated from Spanish, I believe. The author himself, I believe, was born in Mexico City, and I just haven't read a lot of historical books, historical mysteries specifically, that are by authors of color. So I'm really excited to get to this one because I just think it's going to be really great for me. And I've heard really good reviews, especially for people who like Sherlock Holmes and are looking for something like that. I've heard this one's a good one. So the next one I have is by Dacher Stoker and J.D. Barker, and it's called Dracul, and I believe it's supposed to be following the author of Dracula, Bram Stoker, and it's him having actually encountered Dracula, and that's how he writes a story, and then he escapes from it, comes home, and then it sounds like there is more of a mystery that happens, probably with more Dracula-esque. I've had this book a while, and I have not picked it up, and I know I should, and I know I need to get to it, but for some reason, I just think it's going to be slow. But it's historical, and it's horror, and it's creature horror, so I don't know why I'm putting it off. It's gothic as well, so I really need to bring this up on the TBR. I think I've just had it so long. You ever have a book sit on your shelf for so long that You kind of just overlook it every time because it's been there for so long. I don't know. So that's that. Then we have another one that's had mixed reviews, so I've kind of not read it just because I don't know how I'm going to feel about it. That's The Sanatorium by Sarah Pierce. So in this one, we're following a woman who's a detective, and her brother and his fiance ask her to come visit this hotel that used to be a sanatorium and stay there for their engagement. And I think some things start happening. I think maybe one of them is going to die, and she is trying to figure out what happens. It's now a series, which I don't know how I feel about a thriller series, but I have had this for a while, and I think mainly it's the thriller aspect that's stopping me from picking this up because I just haven't had the best luck with thrillers, but I'm hoping to try a gothic one, and maybe that's what's going to work for me because I haven't really read a lot of gothic thrillers. I've read more of your standard thriller. So yeah, I've heard mixed reviews, but I have good hopes for this one. Then we have another one that I've kind of picked up and put down multiple times, and it's more to do with the timing that I picked it up and trying to listen on audio. It just wasn't working for me, so I need to give it another shot. I'm not DNFing it or anything. It's just been one that hasn't had its time yet. And that's The Lighthouse Witches by C.J. Cook. This is about a woman who goes with her 2 daughters to this lighthouse because she's being paid to do a portrait, I believe, of this lighthouse. She needs to paint stuff. She's an artist. And I believe some weird stuff starts happening at the lighthouse. I also think that there's some weird stuff with the family going on, and I do believe it's maybe dual timeline. And also, it's on a Scottish island, so that's why it's always intrigued me. And I did like the writing, it's just the audiobook wasn't really doing it for me, so I need to pick this up again because I've heard good things, and I know a lot of you have recommended it to me as one that you think I would like, so I really need to give it another shot. I just haven't yet. And then I have House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland. I've had this on my TBR for a while. I have more fairy tale like ones, but this one was specifically on the gothic list, but I know that there's other ones probably on my TBR that I could have included, but I just didn't because I wasn't sure if it's more fairy tale or if it's more gothic. But this one I think is gothic, and I believe it's about these sisters who disappeared when they were younger, the 3 of them, and then they came back and no one ever knows what happened to them. And then I think one of their sisters goes missing again, and the 2 other sisters are trying to figure out what's happened to her. And I've heard there's like kind of like body horror stuff where things are growing out of their face and stuff like that. And I've just always been intrigued by this. It's a YA book, I believe, but I think I'm going to really like it. It reminds me of The House of Salt and Sorrow, which very different plots, but for some reason I always think of that one when I see this one, and I really liked that one. So I really want to give this one a shot, and I just need to get to it before I know that I'm never going to anymore, you know? It's been also on my TBR for so long. Then I have 2 I'm just going to talk about together because they're by the same author. So that's Lost Among the Living and Silence for the Dead by Simone St. James. These are historical horror-y. She always writes like paranormally horror, but they're considered gothic as well. And I have no idea what these ones are about, but they're both historical. This one set in 1919, this one in 1921. I've loved pretty much every book I've read from Simone St. James. I've given 3 5-stars. No, what am I doing? I've given 3 5-stars and 1 4-star. That was hard for my hands to do. So I have high hopes for these. I really like to go into her books not really knowing too much. So far the last historical one that was like more historical, these were like printed before Sundown Motel, The Broken Girls, The Book of Cold Cases. That one was not a full 5-star. So I don't know if these will be 5 stars because these are her earlier works, but I do love Simone St. James, and I think she writes a really good like atmospheric gothic type story. So I'm looking forward to those. They usually have something to do with paranormal, with ghosts. So I'm happy about that. And I will be picking that up hopefully soon. Then we have another one I also picked up on a whim at Half Price Books, and that is Miss England by Stacey Halls. So I believe we're following a nanny who's taking care of these 2 children at this house, and I believe she starts to see like weird things happening with the mom of this house and feeling like something's not right. So it really reminds me of like The Turn of the Screw or those kind of other stories where you have a character who's coming into a house and a family and they have dynamics that seem just off. It also reminds me a little of Mexican Gothic, how she goes to a house and the whole family's kind of weird. I think that's giving me this vibe, but I think it's going to be more mystery or like thriller vibes. I don't think it's going to be horror. It does say mystery on the back, so I think it's going to be more mystery than anything else, but I am intrigued, and I think I bought the large print, so I don't think it's going to take very long to read, even though this looks very big. I think it's actually not that long. Then we have one that's a little intimidating for me because I ended up DNFing the other book by this author, and that's House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. I really didn't DNF The Year of the Witching for anything other than trigger warnings were just like way too high for me. But I did look into this one a little bit, and I think this one's like going to be a little bit better for me to handle. But I've heard also really good reviews on this, and this is about a woman who basically needs to make a living, so she decides to sign up to be like a blood maiden to this woman who's essentially a vampire, though I don't think they ever say vampire. And she gives her blood. In turn, she gets to like stay at this manor and stuff, and I think she just gets wrapped up in this like house with this woman who is like a really rich upper society person, and I think it's just about that whole world and the sinisterness behind it. I really don't know much more because I just think it's a book that's probably going to lend itself to only knowing a smaller synopsis, but it's not very long, and I hope to get to it soon because I do like vampire stuff as well. And like I said, I did look up trigger warnings, and I think that they're going to be something I can handle. So I'm hoping to give this a shot very soon. Okay, we only have 5 books left. The next one is The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein by Kirsten White. I picked this up because I saw Kayla from Books and Walla had read it a long time ago, and she did enjoy it, and it's just intrigued me because I do like Frankenstein, and this is about Frankenstein's wife, I believe. Yeah, the Dr. Frankenstein's his wife, and I believe it's like her story and how she gets out of this really bad relationship and like what she has to do to survive, and I've just heard good things. I do think it's YA, and it's definitely gothic, but I'm interested. I'm always like kind of retelling or reimagining of certain stories, and I really enjoy seeing perspectives that we didn't get a lot of, because in the Frankenstein book, you don't get very much from his wife at all. It's very much about Frankenstein and the creature he creates, and this is giving you more insight from the woman's point of view, and kind of getting her story told is something that I'm always interested in because a lot of women's stories haven't been told. So I'm really excited to read this one. And another one I picked up recently is The Witch of Willow Hall by Hester Fox. This is about, I think, women who go and live at this hall and they flee, and then one of the sisters is having to come back to the hall, and it's set in 1821, and that's all I know is they have to come back to this hall, and I'm a sucker for like a good mysterious house type story. Haunted house, but also just like spooky vibes, like uncanny house. I'm always down. So I picked this one up before because I had heard of Hester Fox, but I haven't read anything by Hester Fox, and I've been really intrigued, and I just think she's going to be an author I enjoy, so I saw this one at half price for a good amount, so I picked it up, and I hope to get to it soon. And again, I like with my mysteries and stuff, I like with a lot of books actually, to go in not knowing too much because I think it makes it more fun to discover along the way, but that's that one. Then we have The Death of Miss Westaway by Ruth Ware. This is one I'm struggling with because I've had not such good success with Ruth Ware. I've read The Woman in Cabin 10, didn't like it. I read The It Girl and didn't like it. I think I gave that one maybe like 3 or 4 stars, I can't remember, but like it's the one that I just think about just being, it was too long for me. But I've heard from a lot of people that this one and The Turn of the Key are like her best ones. And this one, I really don't know anything about. She gets an inheritance from her grandmother and has to go to this hall. So I feel like this one could be one that I like. Oh, hello. Because I like kind of like inheritance stories and stuff, and like a creepy hall, and like there's probably going to be family she didn't know she had that she has to contend with, and maybe there's murder. I don't know. Just, yeah, thank you. So that's this one. I don't know for sure if I'll pick it up. It's kind of been on there for a while, and I got it for a really good price at, I believe, Goodwill, so I just picked it up, but I don't know. I'm suspect that I'll like another Ruth Ware. Then we have All the Murmuring Bones by A.G. Slater. So I believe this one is about a family who's made a deal with the Mer, which I believe are just going to be mermaids, and in order to keep their deal, like basically if they, I don't know if they have to feed something to the Mer, but in return their ships are safely returned home and people are kept fed and stuff like that. But this family has struggled for a while to keep up their side of the bargain, and now they're asking their daughter, who's going to be the main character, to sacrifice a lot for their family, and I believe it's going to unravel a lot of family secrets and stuff like that. So this one sounded really good because I haven't tried a lot of mermaid stuff, but I am interested to get a try because I do like me a good like supernatural creaturey type story. So, and I also think it's going to be interesting to see like darker mermaids, because I think a lot of times I've seen more like Ariel type mermaids. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just am interested to see something a little darker. So that's All the Mermaid Bones. And then the final one is Our Share of Night by Mariana Enriquez. I picked this up really recently. I've seen a lot of people read it, and it's one that is really intriguing to me. It's about a father and son who, I think the mom passes away, and then they have to go back home to her family. And a lot of things start unraveling. They're dealing with grief, and I think it's a lot of exploring that, but also I believe the family is like kind of part of a cult, and I think a demonic cult. So it sounds really interesting. I didn't really realize this was gothic, but it makes sense that this would be considered gothic. And yeah, I've just heard such good reviews on this, so I'm really excited to try it and give this kind of horror a try, because like I said, I've liked gothic, but I haven't read as much like demonic type stuff or cult stuff, so I'm interested to see how this goes for me, but I've just heard such good things. So that is Our Share of Night. Okay, I'm only going to pick up a small stack because I cannot do all that or it's going to fall over. But those are all the books on my Gothic TBR. I hope this was fun, and if you have any book recommendations down below, not that I need more, you know, but for everyone else in the comments, if you read a lot of these and you have other recommendations, people might be interested. So please leave that down below. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.